Alright.
We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome 80-20 baseball community. I am fired up for this week's episode. Good to be here in our weekly get-together where we discuss how to be better coaches, even better parents of players at the youth level, and players that are listening to be better players. Of course, the focus here, the main focus is for youth coaches. I received 4 emails yesterday from coaches that are enjoying and getting a lot out of the podcast, and I love that. I love to hear from you. I love to be along and go along on your coaching journey. I have received some questions about warm-up guides and inner squad or intra-squad scrimmage guide. I have not forgot, and I'm still building it out. It's just coming along slowly. I'm building out the coaching course, and that will be ready. I don't know when, but it will be ready for all you, and you will all know on this podcast or on the homepage of the website as soon as it's ready. I just want to keep this podcast the main priority right now in terms of getting a good quality podcast episode out to you each week. I'm doing updates on the website to continue to bring good stuff over there. And I don't want to put a coaching course out there that's mediocre. I want to put a high quality coaching course that will elevate all of you with regard to your coaching strategies, plans, know-how, and confidence. In today's episode, we're going to discuss one surefire way you're on the right path as a coach. I have a coaching quote of the week for you, a good one here. We're going to dive into the 7 parts to building trust with players, the 7 parts to building trust with players. And like I mentioned in last week's episode, I have a podcast app recommendation for you. Now, this episode may be a little bit shorter this week. My schedule's been jam-packed, but I want to continue bringing quality content. With that said, it might be a little bit shorter, but I promise it'll be good. Or at least I promise I'll give you my best. Quick review of last week. We discussed a 2 to 3 step plan for best dealing with umpires when we perceive them to have made a bad call. So go back and listen to that. I discussed a throwing program, throwing routine tip for more advanced youth baseball players that I got from a college coach, and I think it would apply really well to the more advanced youth baseball levels, middle school and early high school years. And we discussed the 4, or maybe I should say 3.5 main reasons youth hitters are not on time for the pitch. And if you're not on time for the pitch, that's a problem. Now, if you're not on time for the fastball at any level, that's a problem because that makes it a lot easier for the pitcher. So you got to be on time for the fastball and then adjust from there and be able to push the hands, keep the hands back and adjust and slow down the swing just enough to hit those off-speed pitches. But at the youth level, more often than not, you're going to have hitters that really struggle to be on time for the fastball, especially against those pitchers that throw harder. So definitely want to work on that timing and being on time for the hardest pitch that the opposing pitcher throws, and then work from there. And again, you can listen to all that in episode 180. So the intro message, the quick intro message for today's podcast, 80-20 baseball is not for everyone. It's definitely not for those that want to stick solely to the way they learned to play the game. So it's definitely not for those coaches that want to stick solely to the ways, the methods that were used when they played or by the coaches that they had. Now remember, the key word is solely. And the 80-20 Baseball Podcast is most certainly not for those that want to reinvent the entire wheel just to reinvent it. It's for players, parents, and most of all, youth coaches that want to go out to the field with confidence, with strategies that work best, not just because they're old school or new school. The only unbreakable affiliation we have to coaching methods here at 80-20 Baseball is they have to work best for our players. So that's where we're coming from. I told myself when I started this, if I try to make a podcast that everybody likes, then it's going to come up short of its potential. In other words, if I'm just trying to put stuff out there that everybody agrees with or it sounds good to everyone, then we're not making progress and we're not getting the best information out there. We're not using the best methods. We want to be ahead of the curve, but we also don't want to just run ahead if something from the past works really well or better than anything that's being discussed and coming out today with new coaching methods. There's a lot of old school stuff that works better than the stuff you're hearing nowadays, and there's new school stuff that works better than what now is, in my opinion, considered outdated and should have been updated methods and strategies that were used in the past. But we don't affiliate. We're not partisan. We're just looking for the best. All right, part one today, Twitter post. I threw this Twitter post out. You can follow on Twitter, 8020_baseball. I threw this Twitter post out, quote, "A sign that you're on the right path as a coach is when you see another coach/team having a lot of success, you get intrigued, not envious." A sign you're on the right path as a coach is when you see another coach or team having a lot of success, you get intrigued, not envious. You don't get jealous. You're intrigued. That is a sign you're on the right path as a coach. When you see another team have success, another coach or other coaches have success, and you get intrigued. What are they doing? What can I learn from it? You're not jealous or envious. And I think that goes across most walks of life. Thought that one came out well. A sign that you're on the right path as a coach is when you see other coaches having success, other teams having success, and you get intrigued, not envious. Coaching quote of the week comes from an anonymous coach whose first name starts with a B and ends with an O and has 2 letters. All right, coaching quote of the week. I have a nice list of quality quotes that I've saved and compiled over the years. And I was reading one, and it was actually one I had shared with everyone before, but it sparked this thought in my head, this quote in my head that I'm going to share with you right now. Quote, "You win 90% of your games during practice. You win 90% of your games during practice." End quote. It's a pretty straightforward quote, but I think it can help cultivate that paradigm that we need to have as a coach. It's really gratifying, or I should say, it'll bring a lot of peace to your coaching mindset when you know that you're winning games by putting together quality practices, working smart, working hard, working efficient, working on the right things, not wasting time, having a fun environment, an environment where the kids want to show up. You're going to win 90% of your games during practice, give or take 90%. Of course, it's an approximation, but if you're like me, you like percentages, and of course, it's not going to be exact for everybody, but the idea is that you win most of your games, almost all your games during practice, not during the game, because during the game, there's less control as a coach. In fact, you shouldn't do a whole lot of coaching during the game. Now, during scrimmages, yes. During official games where there's an ump and stress and fans and scoreboard and all that, the players already have a lot on their plate. They don't need a huge serving of your coaching strategies and tactics and methods and pointers and messages and pep talks, etc. They don't need all that from us during the game. Maybe a little bit here, a little guidance, but not much. Now, this is good to know this. I always feel like this is very nice to know as a coach. It brings a little bit of peace because the game is a little hectic, a little chaotic. Things are out of your control more so than practice. Practice is almost completely controllable by the coach and the coaching staff, the environment, the training environment. The game's not so much. But remember, in competition in the games, the team is going to fall to their training levels, the level of their training. Players in the team are going to fall to the level of their training. They're typically not just going to rise to the occasion. We've talked about that quote before from a couple of famous people, including a well-known Navy SEAL. Now you might say, Coach Bo, why just 90%? Why not 100%? Hey, you know what? Sometimes you get a bounce that goes your way during the game. You get a call that goes your way during the game. Maybe a hitter who hasn't really improved much in practice runs into a pitch and hits a home run, or a pitcher who hasn't really figured out much during practice, has been struggling in bullpens, hasn't really been showing a lot of improvement. Every once in a while, you'll get a good outing or a great game performance out of those players. And some players, there's a few players I've played with over the years. One of them that's well-known, Jared Weaver. Jared won 150 games in the major leagues and was a college player of the year. I think combined, he was like 187 wins between college and pro ball, and 3 years of college and pro ball. It's almost 200 wins at an elite level, and he didn't really work hard in practice, but he was that anomaly. He was that exception. He was that uber gifted, uber talented, genetically gifted player, and he was very competitive. He would rise up to the game. He was the one who would rise up to the game. He would rise to the game and then some, but for every one of those type of players, you're going to have 100,000 that don't get to that. But 95% of the time, you win your games during practice. I would put 95% of your energy into creating an awesome practice environment, an awesome training environment, and then a little bit of coaching up, a little bit of guidance during the game, a little direction, be the compass during the game if they get off course a little bit, maybe a little bit of a motivational type of speaker during the game, keep the team rallied up and positive, definitely not coaching up a full-on hitting approach during the game, the pitching delivery during the game, how to cover first base, how to turn two, how to run a bunt defense, how to back up your teammates. That shouldn't be done a whole lot, if at all, during the games. Scrimmages? Absolutely. Official games? Kids need to learn to play the game too. They need to learn to play and feel it out on their own. All right, part 2, building trust. Building trust with our players. As coaches, building trust. You hear a lot of this, you got to build trust, you got to build trust. And one thing that there's a lot of in the coaching community, there are a lot of phrases, platitudes, but when it comes to specific action steps, there's not nearly as many. And there's a reason, I think, a big reason. If you just give a platitude or something kind of general or something that just go along to get along kind of statement, you got to build trust. Nobody's going to argue with that. But now you say, how do you do it? Now you're going to get some more disagreement or perceived disagreement. I got no problem with sharing out where I'm coming from on this and my recommendations, and I got 7. Building trust is a lot more than just being honest with players. All right, trust in maybe a relationship or a marriage starts with, the first and foremost is that honesty. But with players, it's honesty, but it's also, I guess these 7 things also carry over into any relationship. But when we're building trust with players, number 1, and there's no order of prioritization here, but number 1, be prepared. Do prep work. Be prepared when you get out to the field. Players will know if you're prepared or not. They'll sense it, they'll see it, they'll feel it, they'll know it if you're prepared or not. And they don't need to be crazy prepared, OCD. Don't get there. You need to be able to pivot and adjust and feel out the practice. Everything shouldn't be down to the second in terms of how your practice is going to move along. It definitely should be scripted. It definitely should be bulleted. There should be some times on there with some buffer. Be prepared. Do some prep work. I know you're all busy. I'm working on practice plans, building out some practice plans. Not some, but a whole set of practice plans. I'll keep you posted when those are ready as part of the coaching course. But be prepared. Go out there prepared. Players will know that. That builds trust. They're like, oh, coach is ready. He's prepared. He takes it serious. Or at least this is a priority. Number 2, stand and speak confidently. There's a caveat to this. We do not want to come across as a know-it-all. Know-it-alls lose trust. But if you stand and speak confidently, you gain trust. There's a difference between standing confidently, speaking confidently as a coach, as a leader, and being a know-it-all. You can be somebody who is open-minded, has a growth mindset, willing to learn, but also you can get up there and stand and speak confidently. More than anything, coaches are a lot older than players. We're already way ahead in terms of how we see the world, our understanding of the world, our understanding of life, and just the experience and wisdom we have. So that in and of itself should give us the ability, the confidence to get up there, stand and speak confidently, but not be a know-it-all. So that's a big one. You build trust. Players want a coach that stands confidently and speaks confidently. This is more of a tone and the pace of how you speak than what you say. And you don't need to stand up there and act like you have all the answers to seem or appear or be perceived as confident by your players. A big thing is just standing confidently too. Standing confidently, I think we could all work on that. If anything, it's good for your posture. At a minimum, you're going to have better posture if you stand confidently. Number 3, be very, very careful when you're about to put your players on blast. This is the fastest way to lose trust with players and disconnect. Unplug the cord right out of the outlet. Connection gone. Router turned off. Boom, you got no signal. SIM card pulled out of the phone, those that still have them, no service. This is the fastest deal breaker of all the trust building areas, or I should say things you shouldn't do. This right here will have the biggest impact on players' trust in a coach. Be very careful to put players on blast. What do I mean by that? I'm not saying you don't raise your voice. I'm not saying you're not firm with them. You should never try to make fun of a player. We're adults. That's not our job. If you're trying to make fun of players, that's a bad place to be as a coach. We shouldn't be making fun of players. We shouldn't be teasing players. That's what their peers are for. In fact, I've talked about this. I think bullying and flat out disrespect of teammates and peers on our team and even in schools, that's a non-starter. That's a non-negotiable. And that'll really fire me up. That'll really get my blood boiling, and that'll get me talking real firm and real fast and real harsh. But when they're just ribbing on each other, If we take all that away, nobody's going to have thick skin when they get to the real world. And hey, we all know the real world is not easy. All right, we got to have some thick skin. But as coaches, we should not be the ones making fun of players, and we shouldn't be putting them on blast, especially when they make a physical error. If it's a hustle thing, maybe you can call them out a little bit. I think you can call them out a little bit on hustle, but I think the best strategy here is to put them on blast, but where only they can hear it, or maybe where only them and their parents can hear it, all right, away from the other players. They'll respect that. It shows them that you have the control, not just have an outburst and start yelling right on the spot, that you were patient on it, and you came back around a minute later, 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, you got them off to the side, and you told them, hey, that's not how we do it here. That's not the expectation. We're not going to have that from our team, from our players. We're not going to treat others like that. We're not going to do that. Just don't put players on blast. Trust me, when they mess up or make an error, they don't need the coach pointing it out. Trust me. They already feel bad enough. And if they don't, maybe baseball is not the sport for them. Maybe sports isn't their thing. Maybe they need to do something else. And I think in most cases, that isn't the case. Baseball is great for most all kids to go out and play. So just be very careful to put them on blast. Avoid that. Now, if it's a hustle thing, maybe you put them on blast to set an example. I like putting teams on blast a little bit when the team is lacking some hustle, or the team is slacking, or the team isn't following or rising up to the expectations you've set forth. So maybe I should restate it. Never put players on blast. Maybe I should say, try your best to avoid putting players on blast. Never make fun of them. Never tease them. That's not your job. We're the adults. Number 4, building trust. Give the why, but don't oversell. You should be giving the why with everything you do, but don't oversell it. And you don't have to give the why every time you do something, or maybe it's when you introduce it, maybe the second or third time. But don't oversell it. They'll sniff that out. Players will be like, man, coach is really trying to sell this. I don't know. If you're doing something right, you're doing something good as a coach, you don't need to oversell it, but give them the why. Number 5, be consistent. Be consistent. Kids need coaches and adults that are consistent. Not perfect, but consistent. That doesn't mean you're going to mess up here and there, once a season, twice a season, or this, that, and the other. But overall, be very consistent. Number 6, be even keel. These are a little different. Consistent and even keel are a little different. Even keel is more your temperament. Consistency is enforcing of expectations, rules, standards, how you run things, those expectations and the rules that you have for your coaching staff and for the players. Even keel is more of your temperament. Be even keel for the most part. You might have some fluctuation. Shouldn't be super volatile though. Be even keel. And if you're not good at this, maybe you got to start meditating or go for a run before you go out to practice. I'll tell you what, you go do a 20-minute 2-mile run, or some of you are all faster, way faster than me, maybe do a 15-minute. My brother-in-law Dave, he probably run 3 miles in 20 minutes. Hey, go do a 20-minute 2-mile, 3-mile run before you go to practice if you have time. That'll really help. I'm not joking. I've worked out before I've gone to coach, and there's a noticeable difference in how even keel and relaxed I stay. And the last tip for building trust, make sure your players feel heard. Make sure that it's a two-way connection. It's not a one-way street. Building connection, building trust goes both ways. To get their trust, let them feel like you understand them a little bit, or that you care to understand them. Show that you care. Show that you care about them as a person, as people, as a human being, not a position, not a jersey number, not a spot in the batting order, not as a closer or your starting pitcher or your shortstop, but as a person. Use their names as early and often as you can. Give praise and make sure that they know you care about them as people. Do they have a hobby? Almost all of them have a hobby or two, something they do outside of baseball or something they enjoy outside of baseball. You should know what that is. And you should maybe do a little background research on it if you don't. I mean, nowadays with the internet, it's so easy to do this. I'll tell you what, if a kid surfs, or if a kid does hockey, or a kid sings or plays an instrument, or plays a video game, just having 2 or 3 key facts or things about the contemporary world in which that hobby exists, that goes a long ways. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to be a Wikipedia on it, but that'll go a long ways. That'll go a long ways to them. You genuinely care. And ask them questions. At the end of the day, if you don't know anything about anything, just ask them questions and let them share out. That's probably the first place to start. So, number 7, show them that you care and that they're understood. And first and foremost, They are kids, people, human beings, not jersey number or position or a spot in the lineup. All right, moving here to part 3. I got this podcast app recommendation. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect app. And I know some of y'all use Spotify. A lot of you use the Apple Podcast app. I see the statistics come through. By the way, the number of listeners is higher than ever, and it just keeps going up, which fires me up. Just in the last month, there's been another big spike, and that pumps me up. And I also see a lot of you are on the Apple Podcast app, and that's what I've been using forever is the Apple Podcast app. But finally, I was sitting there going, the person or the people, I should say, the team behind the Apple Podcast app, they don't really fully grasp the podcast user, like the user experience. They don't fully grasp it, in my opinion. Of course, completely subjective. I just felt like they were missing out on a few things. And of course, it's Apple and they got all the money in the world. And I really like Apple products. I just felt like the podcast app could have been a lot better, and they were slow rolling it, and I thought, man, there's got to be something. Well, I'm not a big fan of Spotify, and I know a lot of people listen to Spotify. I have Spotify. I like it. I just thought, not a big fan of that. It's not like I don't like them. I just thought, man, there's got to be something better. This isn't crazy technology. This is basically just a user interface. You get that right. RSS feeds are RSS feeds. That takes care of themselves. And I found this one called Overcast. And it's not perfect, but it checks more boxes than the Apple Podcast app and the Spotify one. I get no money off them. I don't know who it is. It's some guy like in New York who just said, I'm going to build this podcast app. At least that's what the kind of the backstory that I read. Overcast. There's a free version that just has a little banner on the bottom. I don't think it would bother most people. I started using it for a couple months and I said, hey, I'm just going to do the $10 a year. And I really like it. So I figure for 75 cents or 83 cents or whatever that is a month, I listen to podcasts every day. It's nice. It's worth it. So Overcast, again, I have no affiliation to them. I'm not making anything off them. I don't even know the guy who makes it, but Overcast podcast app. Try it out. There's a couple things I think that could be updated or adjusted, but if there was 10 boxes I'm checking on a podcast app, the user experience that I want, it's checking 8 of those, and the Apple Podcast is checking 6, and the Spotify's checking, 6, 5 or 6. I like it better. Hey, you're listening to a podcast right now? It might be worth a check, or not. Maybe you got other important things to do and you're good with where you're at. All good to me. Just throwing that out there. But I thought, this is a good app. I definitely want to recommend it. I thought it was a couple notches better, in my experience, than the other options, the other main options that are out there. All right, next week, I have a huge tip for best handling players that also have their own private coaches. This is a question I get a lot, and I know over the years this has been an issue. So I have a couple big tips for coaches that are trying to work with players that already have their own private coaches. This isn't all players, of course. And I'm going to share out a couple tips for best handling this from a kind of a coach of a team that has players that are going on the side and getting work with private coaches. There are some strategies that definitely will help make the best of this situation. So that's next week. Got the drill design guide over at the website. Go get the drill design guide, 21-page PDF, emailed to you immediately. Put a lot of time into that. And it's got the 7-8 parts to designing a good drill, the paradigm to understanding how to design a good training drill anytime, anywhere, pretty much any activity, any sport. Follow on Twitter, 8020_baseball. For those of you who haven't already, if you could just quickly leave a rating or review, that would be great. That helps out the podcast. Just takes a couple minutes. And email me your success stories. You can use the contact page over at 8020baseball.com, or you can email me directly, Coach Bo, B-O as in Bo Jackson, not that French soap opera version of the spelling, Coach Bo at 8020baseball.com. And until next week, take care of yourselves, your health, take care of your families, close friends, and take this out there and use it. Take it out to the field, put it into action. Love being here with all of you. Have a great rest of your week. And until next week, adios.
This has been the 80/20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.